This is going to be fun. Welcome to Dad Chat.
Just want to finish these chats with Dad. Dad, I just want to chat with you some more.
Welcome to another episode of Dad Chat.
Dad stuff, okay?
For everything dads need to know about business, life, news, and doing everything they need to do to take over the world.
Take over the world.
And still get home in time for dinner.
Time for dinner, sweetie.
With your hosts, Greg Rollett and Matthew Goldfarb.
Hey, welcome to Dad Chat here. Greg with Matthew, and we are excited for this episode. We have the news that you need as a dad, as an entrepreneur, and as someone who is trying to take over the world and still be home at time for dinner. Matthew, my man, how are you doing this week?
Dude, I am great. It's almost school's back in session, and the kids are gone for a while, so enjoying some quiet and some time to work.
Nice. And we just avoided a hurricane last week, so that was fun. The good news is the hurricane didn't come. The bad news is that we had basically spring break at our house for like an extra 4 days during Labor Day. And then I wake up this morning, go to the gym, and there's another tropical storm heading our way. Looks like Sunday night. So all that weather, man. We don't have the snowstorms that you guys have, but these hurricanes aren't fun either.
I know, it's always like every other week they're like, all right, this is going to be the apocalypse of the week, of the year. It was kind of that old gig that Jon Stewart used to do back in the day. It was, the storm of the century of the week. And I feel for you guys out there. It's hard. We have our moments, but definitely not as that continuous fear of the impending apocalypse.
Yeah, and as kind of the dad of the family, I think who the big winner of all of these storms are, like, trust me, like, I feel for the Bahamas, I feel for Puerto Rico from a couple years ago. Like, there's not making light of the situation, but, when these, like, scares come up like that, the big winners, man, the home stores, like your Home Depots, your Lowe's, and your supermarkets, man, because as soon as that panic sets in, like, we went to Publix, which is our, like, local supermarket, and legit, shelves were empty within 24 hours of like, this thing might come your way. There's no water, there's no gas, there's no plywood. I mean, it's just, it sends people into this, like, this frenzy. And I'm always reminded, there's a line from the Independence Day, the movie with Will Smith from back in the day, where the president's talking and he says, a person's smart, but people are stupid. And it's that like herd mentality that just, it's kind of batty. And, I do my best not to have that herd mentality, but I woke up one morning, it was like 2 days before the storm was supposed to hit. And I freaked out and I turned to my wife and I was just like, we need to go to the store right now. We need more water, more food. And my wife just laughs at me and she goes, we're good, babe. Like, we're good. I was like,
we still got we got our reserves from last time.
It's wild, man. So if you're in the path of the storms, take care of yourself, take care of your family. Obviously, family first. Make sure you do what you got to do. But man, it's crazy times out there, and we got some news, some updates, some stories for you guys this week. And I think the big news, at least from the tech world, it seems like you can't escape it on all social media. It's everywhere. They do it every year. I don't think it's as cool as when Steve Jobs was there, but Apple just did their big product release for the fall where they released the iPhone 11. And a lot of updates with this. There's obviously a new iOS like operating system with some cool stuff. But obviously, what everyone's talking about, we're talking about the phones, the iPhone 11, the iPhone 11 Pro, and the 11 Pro Max. And, this isn't really like a tech show. And at least I don't consider myself like, I don't know the difference between a super gigahertz type phone, anything like that. But when it comes to things that I care about.
It's super. That's the big difference.
Exactly. You can see even more colors that I couldn't see before. But I think one of the big things that they did with this phone, if you've seen any of the sneak peeks of the phone and what they showed there, is there's a ton of cameras on this thing. And as a dad, we're always outside, we're adventuring, we're doing things, trying to take pictures of the kids and the memories. And Matthew, I know you're the same with Nate. And did you have a chance to look at there's 3 different cameras on the back of this thing? What were kind of your initial thoughts, looking at this or checking this out? Is this overkill for the average, let's call it the average dad out there?
Yeah, it's funny. It's like I definitely am like the annoying dad, right? I'll take tons of pictures and just drive everyone around me nuts. Like my kids definitely develop that fake smile when he knows you got the camera out there, and it drives him crazy. And I will say that when the iPhone 10 came out and they got this portrait mode, it definitely improved the quality. But this thing is talking about different angles, and I don't know if it's getting to a point that for like an everyday life, you need to go that far. It's a nice to have, but it's definitely getting a little crazy. Like there's so many different functionalities and different ways to do it that I'm like, I don't think I'm ever going to use it or have the time. I just want to be able to, is the picture going to be good? Am I going to like looking at it? Is it good enough so that I don't need to buy a separate Nikon camera to go with it? But I don't know. It's kind of reaching a point where it does feel a little bit crazy.
A little feature overkill. So I'm with you on portrait mode. I think was a game changer. It made the weekend photographer into a superstar photographer. And I remember when I first got my hands on it. So I have the iPhone X, and when I first got that, started using portrait mode, like instant game changer. I didn't have to learn how to do anything. All I had to do was like move the little thing at the bottom to portrait mode and shoot that photo. And now like I was taking rock star photos, and I'm far from a photographer, even though we own a video company and a production company. I'm not the guy behind the camera. I thought that was awesome. But now, there's a wide lens, an ultra wide lens, so you can adjust cropping and zoom and all kinds of different things. There's a new night mode that comes on automatic. So I think over time, obviously, when you first get things, they're overwhelming, but some of it might make sense. But a lot of it, like now, like it's hard enough in the moment, like, you're at the playground and they're trying something new. They're on the monkey bars, or they're, attempting like a crazy jump into the pool or whatever. You barely have enough time to take the photo as it is. Now trying to like, which lens do I use? What shutter speed? Like, dude, there's just no way that the average parent is going to be able to react in that much time. So cool, I think, but I think it is a little overkill for most folks today.
Yeah. And it kind of, a lot of times, it also kind of takes you out of the moment. That's one of the big challenges I have is, when my son, he's doing something funny or cool and I pull out the camera, it's almost like he becomes aware of the camera, and it kind of like, whether he turns it into a performance. And so half the time you're like, oh, am I missing this real moment because I want to capture it? And then it's like, all right, I have to get the settings proper. And that definitely is a big thing with using like slow motion. I don't know if you use that, with your kids when they're like doing crazy stuff, but it's this weird thing where you don't know how much is too much. But then sometimes when you do go back and you have these like incredible pictures, like with portrait mode, everyone gets blown away. They're like, well, who'd you hire to do that? And so it is one of those things until I get my hands on it, I won't know for sure, but I definitely question if it reaches a point where the average dad who's just, trying to have some kind of record of being with his kid needs 37 angles and macro lens and, thermal cameras within their iPhone or not. I'm not sure yet.
Yeah, it's definitely not something that I'm not pre-ordering. I'm not waiting in line for it. When my, whatever contract it is with AT&T's up, I'm sure I'll upgrade because that's just the thing to do. But I'm not rushing to the store to grab this. I just don't feel like there's any reason to now drop another $700 to $1,000 to $1,100 depending on the model. I just don't think it's something that anybody needs to rush to go grab because there's a feature that like, oh my God, this is life-changing.
Yeah. Although I will say in transparency, so I used to be that guy, right? I used to be the one who would be like, hey, I'm going to go buy this the moment it comes out, even though I have a camera that's 6 months old and a phone that's 6 months old. But what's happened now is I have an older brother who is that guy. And so he actually texted me this morning and he was like, hey, I just ordered the iPhone 11. He's like, so you're going to be inheriting the 10X Max or whatever the big one, the previous model. I have the 10, but I'm getting the souped up version of the 10, which I'm not complaining about. And probably what that means is in a year, I'll probably inherit the iPhone 11 and I'll have more feedback on it when that happens.
Yeah. And again, I think I'll upgrade at some point as well, but I'm not jumping through any hoops to do that. So let us know if you're one of those people who are waiting in line for the iPhone 11, like why, like what was the thing that pushed you over the edge that's making you pre-order or get in line early or whatever the case is. But that's the big kind of tech news of the week. This is probably the viral story of the past week or two. We just started football season. College football's back. NFL's back. Lots of dads, obviously, is probably spending too much time watching football. But this story, it was like I showed my wife and like it made both of us kind of tear up. And it is the the kid who made his homemade University of Tennessee T-shirt. And the story on it is actually really cool. If you haven't seen this, I'm sure that, if you're on social media, you've probably seen it. But, he was telling his teacher, like, hey, I'm super excited to, show you my shirt. They got to wear like college colors days. It was like a day at school where they didn't have to wear uniforms and they could actually wear like their favorite team's colors and all this. And the student wanted to represent the University of Tennessee, the Volunteers, during college colors days. But, he couldn't afford or didn't own any of their gear, their apparel, whatever it is. So he made his own shirt and he used like paper clips, I think it was, or like the pins to pin it to his shirt. He drew the letters U and T and U of T and wore it to school. And apparently a bunch of some of the girls at lunch started to make fun of him. It says, here's the article from the teacher. The teacher's text says, some of the girls at the lunch table next to his, who didn't even participate in college colors days, had made fun of his sign that he had attached to the shirt. He was devastated. Story has a very happy ending. The teacher posted it on social media. It started to go viral, got into the hands of the University of Tennessee, and they sent him a giant box of stuff, including like jerseys and hats. And now he's like totally decked out head to toe. And then I think the kind of the icing on the cake, which is one of the cool things, University of Tennessee made it into an official shirt that they're selling on campus. And, as a dad, this like warms my heart that the right thing happened. And University of Tennessee, like, really, really cool story. Obviously, they capitalized on a moment. I'm not, short on that. And as a marketer, as an entrepreneur, like that's smart. But, I think, from this standpoint, what I want to talk about is, first of all, like, it's got to be encouraging to kids to now be able to, like, you always don't have to fit in. You don't have to do what every other kid is doing in business and in life. He who kind of stands out is actually like the winner, like the weirdos, right? Like Elon Musk, total weirdo. And he's like the leader of society right now. He's going to like take us to Mars and with electric cars and all these crazy things. He's not trying to fit in. And I think this is like a little moment for this kid that he's never going to forget, that by being a little bit different, doing things his way, he ultimately won. I mean, what are kind of your thoughts as you kind of hear some of this stuff and as you've seen some of the stories around it?
I love this story. I really do for a number of reasons. I mean, first off, I love the fact that the school saw it. And that's one of the cool things about social media is you put something out there, you never know who's going to read it. And to get the attention of U of T, to get all this stuff, and then for them to make it into a shirt is cool. And it's actually a kind of a cool looking shirt, I have to say. Like, I like kind of that homemade feel of it. But what I really like is it's so dangerous, or not dangerous isn't the right word, but, young kids are very impressionable. And when you're young, you have a lot of ideas, you're very creative, you want to express yourself. And it's really tough when you have your peers and kids, are so impressionable. So a kid can make fun of you, you can have a creative impulse or a creative inspiration. And because some other kid is insecure or being mean, that can get quashed. And I think that happens so often when we're young, that we have these like big, bold ideas. And because somebody who's not considerate says the wrong thing, and then you decide, I'm never going to do it again. And I think it's just so important when a young kid has an idea to put themselves out there and to be willing to try and to not let people push them down. And I think that's been a huge sea change in society, and I think for me, like my son, Nate, he's almost 7. He's just entering first grade. When he started kindergarten, it was the first time like other kids from really different places were coming in, and he started to think about, what are other kids saying? Is this cool? Isn't this cool? And it's so easy to get sucked into wanting to be like everyone else. And so to me, this is just a great time, a great moment in time where someone had the courage to put themselves out there, and good on their parents for letting him put himself out there. And that this could have easily been, this kid was embarrassed and never did it again and never tried to be creative or inspiring. But instead, it's hopefully the start of him wanting to push further. And to me, that's what makes this such a killer story.
So how do you, and I think as dads, as parents, it's difficult because you want your kid at one level to fit in. You want him to make friends. You don't want him to kind of necessarily be the oddball that, if you're looking at like Peanuts, like the stinky kid, or whatever it is. But at the same time, you want to challenge them to be unique and personable. And this is it's a constant struggle in my life. My middle son, Ryder, he has a speech kind of thing. So we're doing like speech classes and things like that. And like, you want him to try to fit in, but you also want him to be an original. And so it's tough because there's a balance of, you don't want your kid to be a loner and by himself, but you also want him to be an individual. And I think it's a ever moving target. It's not something that is ever going to be, well, this is who you should be. And even for me, like today, like me and you talk about this all the time, is like, what do we want to be when we grow up? And who are we trying to, whether it's attract as clients or as friends or a community for our family, like, it is a moving target, and I applaud people who are willing to take that risk because, even as, someone who's our age, who, we're parents now, we're, trying to have that somewhat consistency in life, whatever you want to call it. And there's things that I want to do that are like weird, right? That like, if I told all my like quote unquote regular friends, they would think that I'm an outcast, right? Like I took Ryder this year to Comic-Con, and like all my friends like thought like, and we dressed up and we wore like matching like Thanos costumes and shirts and stuff like that. And like, to fit in with the crowd, that's kind of weird. I think Comic-Con is becoming more mainstream now than it was before, but there's certain people that look at you weird, but like, that's what my kids are into, and that's who he wants to be, and that's who he wants to be around. And the good thing, I think, with things like the internet, with social media, for all the bad that's out there, I think now you can find all of your like-minded people, whether it's in a Facebook group or whether it's in a forum or whether it's a podcast or whether it's, there aren't just 6 TV channels anymore. There's a TV station, a YouTube channel, a podcast that is just for you, which I think it makes it easier to be accepted if you're into something that's more of a subculture than mainstream.
Yeah. And like you said, I think there's a balance between, if you have a kid who's into something that's very antisocial, and that's not something I always want to encourage. But yeah, I mean, I think it does start with the parents letting kids know it's okay to have opinions. It's okay to be different. And you also have to teach kids how to stand up for themselves, so that if somebody is making fun of you for it, like learning how to deal with it in a constructive way without, getting into violence or something that's not healthy, I think is really, really important. And so it is definitely a fine balance. But yeah, I do think it starts with us, like us encouraging our kids, being like, hey, if that interests you, you should rock with it. Like we had this thing even last week at my kids' school where when they're behaving well, they get like a special day. So it was like, bring your stuffed animal day. And so Nate has his like, special animals, which we weren't going to bring in because I was like, God forbid something happens to those, all hell breaks loose. But, but he had this really cool fox. I don't even know where he got it, but it's like pink and purple. And so he says to me, he's like, can I bring this into school? And I was like, well, why couldn't you? And he's like, well, it's pink and purple. And I was like, well, what's wrong with that? And he's like, well, pink and purple is a girl color. And I was like, well, A, that's probably not necessarily true. And I said, B, if you like it and you stand by it, bring it in. It's a cool looking thing. And if someone says, why'd you bring it in? You could say, because I liked it. And I do find that if kids are confident and kind of own whatever it is that they're doing, people more often than not will respect it. It's kind of, kids will jump on you when they sense insecurity. But if you own your shit, then like, I find a lot of kids will kind of go with it.
I love that. If you haven't seen this story, again, it's all over social media. It's everywhere. Just look for the University of Tennessee, homemade t-shirt design, something like that. You can see the story. Brought tears to my eyes first time I read it. And it's really good encouragement to, allow your kids to be themselves and really create something unique for themselves. Next kind of news piece is a sad one. Saw this on social media. Someone was sharing it, and it's an article in the Metro, which is over in the UK. And it was a message that a workaholic dad wrote after he found out that his son, who was 8 years old, died during a conference call. And really, really sad story. The one piece that I want to kind of talk about in this is that he was on a conference call with 12 people when he found out about his son's death. And on the conference call, he was talking to these other 11 people and admitted to not taking more than a week off at once since his twins were born. And the twins were 8 years old. So 8 years, never taken a week off to be with his family. And now he doesn't get any more time with this one son. Again, super sad. The son, I think it said like epilepsy. Suffering a rare complication of mild childhood epilepsy. Again, super sad. But my thing, and I just gave a talk to a group of wedding planners a few days ago. Yeah, weird group for me to be speaking in front of. But, in that, I started talking about this concept that is really near and dear to my heart, which is, as dads, like we have 18 summers with our kids. And, you just mentioned Nate's, about to turn 7. So is Colton. They're almost identical as far as birthdays go.
Yeah.
Like we got 11 left. Like when you put that into perspective, like you only have 11 summers. That's 11 summer trips, 11 road trips, 11 opportunities. And if you're saying, oh, we'll get to it next year. Oh, next summer we'll do that. I'm too busy with work, with this call, with this client, with whatever it is. And look, I'm not saying you can't, like we all got to work, right? We got to pay the bills. We got to provide for our family, but 8 years, this guy never took a week off. To me, that's just like, something is wrong if you say that you care about family first. If you say you really care about your kids, the proof isn't in your words, it's in your actions. And again, I never want this story to happen to you, but if you likely do need to take a look at your life, take a look at your schedule, take a look at your actions and see like, am I just saying I'm here for my kids, or are you actually there for your kids? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's heartbreaking for so many reasons. And on one hand, I think for a working dad or an entrepreneurial dad, like I understand the sensibility in terms of saying like, I've not taken off more than a week since the kids were born, because if you're a high earning, high achieving person, you create this quality of life and you probably believe you're doing it for those kids so that they can have the life, they can have the nice things that they want. But, we also neglect the fact that when kids are young, what they want is their parents. They want time with their parents. And I think it's this really tough balance that we're trying to figure out because, in his mind, he's like, he knew he wasn't spending as much time as he wanted to, but he also probably justified it of, I'm doing all these things to create the life that I wanted. And, it's sad that a tragedy has to be kind of the thing that wakes a person up. And so I think for a lot of us who hear the story, we have to figure out, like you said, how do we make a change? I have this, it's in my phone, my iPhone 10. I have this, not to make a joke at the moment, but I have this, I don't even know where I got it, but it's this picture of a dad and his kid on the beach. And it says, spend time with those you love. One of these days, you'll either say, I wish I had, or I'm glad I did. And, you have to find the balance and you have to find the boundaries of where you're going to do what's right, for your life and find a way to work, but also not at the expense of the memories and the time you get with your kids. Because look, even if, I know you, Greg, you work out, you're probably in better shape than most, but, could get hit by a car tomorrow. And so, and if the kid only has so much time with you because you were busy doing this and that, like that's a shame and that's a tragedy. And so I think it's a huge wake up call. And so, at least this guy's he's turning a tragedy into kind of a siren call, a warning call for a lot of us to be like, we need to find that balance because time is the only thing you don't get back. You can always make more money, but right. You can't always get more time.
Dude, I say that all the time. Like I can always get another client. I can always make another sale. But like you never get those moments back. And so one of the things that I've done is, so I have a business coach, kind of a mentor, Craig Ballantyne, who has this concept where you make rules for your life. And it's weird because most people think of rules as restrictive. I think of rules as allows me it frees me up because it makes my decision-making black and white, which actually gives me more freedom and control of my life. Weird concept, but it makes sense in practice. And one of the rules that Craig helped me to establish was from the hours of 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock. This is in the evening. I schedule no phone calls, no dinner meetings, no social media, no emails, no work-related activities from the hours of 5 to 8. And I have trained myself, I've trained my assistant, I have trained my clients, I've trained my business partners, I have trained everyone, and to know that between the hours of 5 and 8, you can't really get a hold of me. Right. And it has been so freeing because now I get to have dinner. I get to do, a little playtime. I get to do bath time. I get to do bedtime. every single night, and I get 3 quality hours that I know are dedicated to them, that I can be fully present instead of, there's a lot of dads who they're home and they're there for dinner, but they're on the phone the whole time, or they're checking email, or they're only half listening to the stories about what happened at school. And, oh, yeah, that sounds good, buddy. Yeah, sounds good, buddy. As opposed to really being fully present. And so, establishing some criteria like that, I think is huge. And I said this at the conference the other day, and I got this Instagram DM, and it's probably, my favorite. Like I teach business, I teach marketing. I know you do a lot of copywriting in the business space too, but this text message is better than any text that I've ever gotten from someone when it comes to, I get people all the time. Oh, I use your technique to make more money in my business or get more clients or do that. But this, man, and I'm not gonna be able to find it now on the fly, obviously. Here it is. It goes, your presentation was awesome. I changed my calendar to block evenings right after you finish speaking. I'm tired of missing out with my family for my clients. Clients I want should understand that family is most important. And I got that direct message right after I got off stage. That was like the best thank you that I ever could have gotten, because again, you're right. You're guaranteed nothing in this life. Right. And so every minute that you spend doing, something that you maybe shouldn't be doing, or things that, I can get to some client stuff tonight. Nothing I do is life or death. Like I'm not a brain surgeon. I'm not a, astrophysicist that's sending people to the moon, where like my job is life or death. I help clients, I help them get results. Stuff can wait until tomorrow, is really how I try to live my life.
So that brings up a good question, right? Because at this point for you, it probably feels like you're doing it, so it's a no-brainer. And for me, it's a little different. I'm a single dad, so I split custody with my kids. So I have a couple days of the week that are my days to do whatever I want, and then I have him a couple days of the week that are just us, and then we switch off weekends. So on the days that I have my son, it's kind of the same thing. It's like I will not schedule calls. I will, I have a client who's actually out in Australia, and they do a lot of team calls like on Wednesdays, at around 7 p.m. our time here, Eastern. And I never make the calls unless it's like an emergency, and then I work something out with his mom. But the days that I don't have him, like, I will do hustle and bust my ass. But the question I have for you is, it sounds good to hear that, but when you first decided to make that change, did that feel tough for you? Was that like a challenge to kind of really stick to it and kind of train yourself that this is that time?
So some things were really easy and some things were really hard. The easy thing was I do almost all of my appointment booking through like a calendar service. I use Appointment Core. Some people use like Calendly or Schedule Once or like things like that to like book their calls and things like that. So the easiest thing to do was to go into, again, I use Appointment Core, and just block off 5 to 8 so that no one could book a call at those times, so that my assistant could not book a meeting at those times. That was the easiest thing to do because I use technology to block that. The hardest thing to do was the thing that's in your pocket that we started this episode with, which is the iPhone. That is the hardest thing. And I started, I tried to do it off sheer willpower, and that did not work very well. So now, again, this is 4 years into this practice, 3 years into this practice. I get 0 notifications on my phone for Facebook, for Instagram, for Twitter, for LinkedIn, like all the social media sites. That, to me, that's my biggest vice. I cannot check email. I hate email with a passion, and I will go days without checking it. Like, we're recording this at like 2:00 in the afternoon. I just checked my email like 5 minutes before we went live today. Like I just loathe email. So I'm good with that. For me, it's checking Instagram. It's checking Facebook. And every time my phone dung between 5 and 8, even at dinner, it was just habit that I would go to get it. And so I took off notifications. And am I perfect at that practice? God, no. I still slip. I still check Instagram here and there. I still, but as a rule of thumb, it has really, really helped. And I think the easiest way for other people to start is, the first thing is just blocking it off on your calendar so that other people can't interrupt that time. They can't book a call. You can't do an onboarding call with a client. You can't, do a follow-up or like anything during those hours. To me, that's the easiest thing to start. The harder thing, which is just another topic for another day, is just the phone distraction. And turning off notifications is a start, but it's not perfect. And my practice isn't perfect, but I do the best that I can with what I can. And I can tell you just even doing better than how most people are doing now is a game changer. Because if you're present to just hear about like Ryder's starting is in like a transitional kindergarten, and for him telling me about like the letters he's learning and the numbers, like it makes him feel so good that he can confidently talk to me about those things. And I actually care. Right. And he's not just talking through me, he's talking to me. And that's like the coolest feeling in the world. That's what makes it worth it to sacrifice in those other areas. Again, it's not sacrificing. It's breaking deeply held habits that you've had, for decades now using the phone. So that's where I started.
Yeah, no, I love that. And yeah, and also sometimes people will say like, oh, I'm missing out on a big opportunity, but you train people how to treat you. And if you make it very clear that you're just not available during that time, then people start to listen to that. And I also think people respect boundaries. I think if you set up a boundary, like this is how things roll, and if you want to get in touch with me, this is the time to do it. I think people respect that. And if someone doesn't respect them, then screw it. That's not somebody you really want to be dealing with anyway.
Darn right. And hopefully we're people that you want to be dealing with, and listening to this episode has really helped you out. That's kind of going to wrap it here for the first episode here of Dad Chat. That was a fun one, man. And if you guys have any questions about the articles, I'll make sure that we link them into the show notes so you can check those out. And we'd love to hear from you on the social medias. So make sure you tag us if you're getting an iPhone, if you checked out the University of Tennessee shirt, or if you have tips for productivity, ways that you're being more present at home. Make sure you tag us, let us know, because you're helping other dads who need that. And hopefully you don't have to, get that phone call on a conference call of a situation like that. Matthew, my man, it was great chatting with you as always. And this was fun.